Sutton Hoo, or Ho, however you say it. Yeah, I didn't realise this, but apparently there's an ancient ship that was buried here, and eventually it rotted away, but it's left an imprint in the sand. So yeah, let's go and have a look. Apparently these burial grounds were for Anglo-Saxon kings and queens. And yeah, it's an incredibly powerful kingdom of East Anglia, which sounds funny now, but back then apparently it's a very powerful dynasty. And yeah, I imagine originally like these places would have reverence, they would have these sacred sites, and then kind of later on you have these Anglo-Saxons. They would see that it was sacred and obviously want to be buried there when they died, so hence why potentially sort of modern day archaeology sort of perceives these as purely just burial grounds where there's probably a lot more energetically going on. Yeah, I haven't really felt much energy wise so far. A bit inhibited to get my dowsing rods out, there's quite a few people around, but it is a beautiful location. It's lovely.
Sutton Hoo is a site of archaeological and energetic importance. Towards the end of the 1930s, before the catastrophic unfolding of World War II, Sutton Hoo became one of the most important archaeological discoveries in the United Kingdom. The site harboured 18 burial mounds of varying sizes from different eras of history. One of the mounds some have theorised was the final resting place of a pivotal Anglo-Saxon king, King Rewald, who bridged a gradual move away from pagan beliefs into Christianity. The site itself is nestled in the countryside of the east coast of the United Kingdom, in the county of Suffolk, within the larger historic area of the country called East Anglia. History around this period is very hazy due to the regular looting and destruction by Vikings of records from many of the monasteries around East Anglia. In 1938 and 1939, the excavations uncovered the imprinted remains of a 27-metre long ship, an iconically crafted helmet, shield, sword, jewellery, coins, and many more highly detailed treasures. It single-handedly changed our understanding of how developed and creative these ancient people were. For me, Sutton Hoo and its story needs to be seen in the broader context. I became aware of this place after exploring the legends and stories around the potential UFO interaction in 1980 between US Air Force personnel at the now abandoned RAF Woodbridge in Rendlesham Forest. The video of my exploration of this story and experiences can be found in the description notes of this video. While in the area, I also visited the secretive military testing facility of Alford Ness. The area around Sutton Hoo is surrounded by fully functioning existing air bases, which are interestingly still dominated by the US Air Force. These include RAF Honington, RAF Lakenheath, and RAF Mildenhall. Former bases in Suffolk include RAF Bentwaters, Woodbridge, Baldey, Myrtlesham Heath, Wattisham, Elmswell, and Strathage Hall.
I was told it's a good view from that tower, although due to the wind it will sway in the wind a little bit, so let's see how my vertigo holds up. I'm a little bit scared of heights, but could give you a really good view of the mounds below, so I'm going to brave it and head there now. I found this map. As it turns out, the huge mound, as we saw as we arrived, was for the great ship, the King's Mound. And yeah, it's around about 14 various mounds, so it's quite a few.
Looking on a map, Sutton Hoo, Rendlesham Forest and the secret military site of Orford Ness are all vaguely in a line. On the mainstream surface, there are tales and stories of research in aeronautics, bombing technology and radar developments at Orford Ness. But is there more to this site with conspiracies of Nikola Tesla-style technologies and rumoured death ray research? My visit to Orford Ness will be the next video release. The land for centuries has been the seat of royal power, and now it could be argued has been replaced as the seat of global military power. So is there a deeper, more energetic meaning to the landscape that previous royal powers, or now the modern day military, are aware of and directly harnessing? The very story of Sutton Hoo's uncovering involves ghosts, spiritualism, psychics, dreamtime premonitions, and messages from the dead. Upon researching this story, the mystical aspect is so intrinsic to its discovery and understanding that mainstream academia and media have all but pushed these elements of the story to the side as an inconvenient footnote. So much about history is sometimes made to look boring, stuffy, and uninteresting. But Sutton Hoo, if you dig deeper, it rewards with so much wonderment.
That wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. The lady at the ticket office made it sound like it was like really swaying in the wind. So I was like, oh, maybe not, but it's fine, it's pretty stable. So yeah, my life is not at risk, put it like that, but brilliant views, amazing.
Much of the story of Sutton Hoo was dramatised in the Netflix 2021 film The Dig, starring Kerry Mulligan, Ralph Fiennes and Lily James. The film itself was based on a book of the same name written by John Preston, who was the nephew of the excavator Margaret Guido, played by Lily James in the film. The book and film take a certain amount of creative licence in changing and condensing the story, but notably, the more high-strangeness aspects of the tale have been completely omitted. The first time I watched the film, I enjoyed it, but weirdly never made the connection between the story and the objects that were found. Having visited Sutton Hoo, I then realised, oh yes, this is what the film was based on. I rewatched it recently. It was still very enjoyable, but I realised how much of the more curious information has been sanitised from the film. Edith Pretty and her husband Frank bought the Sutton Hoo estate in 1926. They were both quite taken by the burial mounds that came with the estate and the relatively modest mansion. At the age of 47 in 1930, Edith bore a son, Robert Dempster Pretty. Unfortunately, Edith's husband, Frank, died a few years later in 1934 from stomach cancer, leaving her widowed and a single parent. Edith in her younger years had helped excavate a Cistercian abbey found on the family estate in Cheshire, known as the Vale Royal. She was also exposed to various archaeological digs whilst travelling the globe. In 1937, Edith became interested in opening up some of the burial mounds. She got in touch with Basil Brown, an excavator, through Guy Maynard, a curator at the local Ipswich Museum. Basil Brown initially excavated mounds in 1938, but it wasn't until 1939, upon returning to the excavations, that Basil Brown and his small team uncovered the 27-metre-long ship, its royal occupant, and various treasures and ornaments. The overall story of the film particularly focused on class struggles, with the self-taught and highly self-educated Basil Brown navigating large institutions and establishment academia. It was only really till very late on that he received recognition for his contribution. Archaeology was very much a clique, an old boys network, which Basil Brown wasn't a part of. Later on, due to its importance, the dig was taken under the control of the British Museum the Science Museum, the Office of Works, coordinated by Cambridge University's Charles Phillips. Archaeology was also a very male-dominated landscape, but Peggy Piggott, later known as Margaret Guido, played a pivotal role in the Sutton Hoo excavations. After the completion of the excavation, the Hall of Treasures led to a tug-of-war over its control. Eventually, Edith decided to bequeath the findings to the British Museum, with its value estimated to have been in 7 figures. This is the briefest history of Sutton Hoo's excavated origins, but the thread, the force that allowed all of this to unfold, is more mystical and otherworldly than most people realise. It was widely known that Edith used to visit London regularly every Thursday to speak to a psychic who would contact her departed husband's spirit for advice and guidance. Some of the guidance that came through was to actually open up the mounds. She would also regularly attend a spiritualist church in the nearby village of Woodbridge. Spiritualism, seances, and mediumship were all very popular during the 1920s and 30s.
I've just been thinking some thoughts, and I find it fascinating the fact that this area is such a hive of military activity. I mean, a lot of it seems to have gone away now. I don't know whether some stuff is still latent and underground, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, it's such a powerfully strategic place, I guess, right on the east coast, kind of a bridging point to mainland Europe. So maybe this is why this kingdom, East Anglia, was so powerful due to that location. But yeah, I mean, I felt the energies here as well, so that could be another reason why it was such a powerful force, in terms of the kingdom, and why that energy is being utilised militarily with all these airfields all around here. I mean, obviously the topography is very flat and lends pretty well to having airstrips, airfields, because you need flat land a lot of the time to take off. But yeah, it's just a fascinating combination. I've just been pondering on it. I thought I'd share my thoughts with you, whether you like it or not.
There is a fantastic article written by Greg, editor and owner of the Daily Grail, titled Spiritualism at Sutton Hoo, the supernatural elements Netflix The Dig left out of one of archaeology's greatest stories. This article very eloquently explores some of the evidence of deeper, more esoteric goings on. Charles Phillips, the Cambridge University academic who eventually directed The Dig, mentioned Edith's beliefs in his memoir, My Life in Archaeology. Maynard introduced me to Mrs. Pretty, and it was proposed we should take a short walk over to the heath to the edge of the woodland. As we proceeded, I could see there was a sizable group of bracken-covered mounds at the edge of the heath. I learned that Mrs. Pretty, a convinced spiritualist, had become interested in this group of what were almost certainly burial mounds on her property, and had applied to Ipswich Museum for advice and help in examining them further. Phillips also wrote that Edith had seen shadowy figures in the dusk moving around the barrows. In the book, A Needle in the Right Hand of God, R. Howard Block provides further evidence of Sutton Hoo's ghostly inspiration. In the summer of 1937, Mrs. Edith May Pretty, a widow living on her estate in Suffolk, East Anglia, recounted to Vincent Redstone, a local historian and fellow of the Society of Antiquaries, her dream of a previous night. She had seen a large white horse with a helmeted rider, then the burial of a man and the flashing of gold objects as they were placed in the grave beside him. Her nephew came with a dowser's rod and assured her that there was gold buried under the largest barrow. Block went on to document further instances of messages from the beyond influencing events. By the end of June, Basil Brown had found the other end of the ship, which provisionally measured 83 feet. On the evening of Sunday, 2nd of July, he attended a meeting at the Woodbridge Spiritualist Church, in the course of which the medium Mrs. Florence Thompson of London addressed Brown specifically, describing several people she could not place. I see green fields which you left for a more important position. Now I see sand, all sand. Someone is holding you up in business. Assert yourself. Go on digging. He reported the results of the séance to Mrs. Pretty, who telephoned Reed Moir of Ipswich Museum to expedite excavation of the ship. Even the events regarding where the historical treasures should eventually go were influenced by spiritualism. Phillips wrote that Edith's spiritualist advisor had come to Woodbridge and was staying at the house. He came out to look at the excavation, and I went for a stroll with him on the heath. We discussed the events of the day, and I found him a pleasant person. He asked for my opinion on what should happen now, and I told him plainly that I thought the time had come for his client to make a very generous gesture. Basil Brown, in his memoir, also theorised that possibly John Dee, the court astrologer and some think master occultist, had unsuccessfully tried to loot the main mound on behalf of Queen Elizabeth. Interestingly, as World War II loomed on the horizon, even the archaeologist Phillips, who usually dismissed the unseen realms, was worried maybe they invoked a curse on England due to the excavations. General sense of imminent crisis was now so oppressive, as July moved into August, that it affected everyone, though few yet showed it openly, and soon it would be affecting everything. Several times it came into my mind that there is a vague belief in East Anglia that the fate of England depends on the unbroken sleep of some ancient king buried near the shores of the North Sea. And we seem to be in a fair way to committing this offence. In 1996, a British TV series, Out of This World, also spoke about some of the ghostly activities that were seen around the mounds. Here we have Len Cox speaking about his mother's friendship with Edith Pretty.
My mother used to come down here and stay with May Pretty before the last war, and whenever she came down here she used to say that she'd seen these soldiers walking round the fields with their spears and their shields, and she was quite convinced that under these mounds there was something of great importance.
Len's mother, Dorothy Cox, was often a visitor to this house, Sutton Hoo, which was owned by May Pretty. It overlooks the River Deben in Suffolk. The estate contains a grave field, a group of low circular burial mounds, all of which had been ransacked centuries before.
Oh, my mother was a great traveller. We used to go abroad every time I left school in the holidays. And then when we got to the continent, she would always insist on us going third class, sitting on wooden seats, because she used to say, well, you'll meet a lot more interesting people down there and you'll learn a lot more about their way of life. Oh, she was a very artistic lady. She liked everything done to the best of everybody's ability. She was a beautiful needlewoman and painted lovely china and wanted the family to do everything to the best of their ability. And of course she was amazingly psychic. So many things that she saw and told us about actually happened afterwards. They're quite incredible. My mother and May Pretty were friends for many, many years, and I think it might probably went back to almost school days.
Oh, that's lovely. What exquisite work. Beautiful.
And she used to come down here and stay with May, and every time she came down here she used to see these soldiers walking around these fields and these mounds with the spears and the shields. Then she used to say to me, I'm quite convinced that there's something under those mounds of great importance, and you really ought to have something dug up.
What are you looking at?
It's those soldiers again.
Soldiers?
The ones I told you about.
May's reaction was, oh Dorothy, you've been dreaming again as usual, a lot of rubbish. But Mother kept on about it, time and again she used to come back and say, no, I've seen them again, May, you've got to get somebody out there and dig that mound up.
No, I feel sure it's this mound, Mr. Brown.
May Pretty asked local archaeologist Basil Brown to investigate the mounds.
Yes, I think this is the spot. This has got the right.
She asked him
feel
to
about
start
it.
on the mound where Dorothy had seen the soldiers, but he explained that it looked like it had already been raided. Throughout that summer of 1938, Basil and 2 estate workers excavated 3 mounds, but found they had all been robbed. The next year, May Pretty insisted he return to look again at the large mound, and after a few days, Basil began to unearth the ghostly impression of an enormous Anglo-Saxon ship and the burial chamber of the then king and his treasure.
This was like finding the crown jewels of the first king of the English people, in a sense, because the man who we think was buried was probably Radwold or Redwold, the most powerful king of the East Angles, but he was not only the king of his own kingdom, but also the high king of all the other English kingdoms, and therefore we can see that what was found, his regalia, things that were made for him, are really his symbols of his status as the king, are essentially the beginnings of our own monarchy now. And I think you couldn't come to Sutton Hoo or to anywhere else of this sort without trying almost to imagine what must have happened here.
The academics in the same show spoke about the importance of the site and also how intuition is vital when excavating historical sites.
Archaeology is a very interesting subject for all of us who practice it, because there is, apart from obviously one's techniques that we have to be absolutely au fait with, there is this fingertip sense of intuition, if you like. You can't excavate a site without having a feeling for it.
Some of us see these things and some of us feel them. To me, I would quite understand that somebody would see something like this here, but I don't see it, but I sense it.
At the time, for me, Sutton Hoo was a real afterthought. It was only upon visiting and researching Rendlesham Forest that I was drawn to these burial mounds. Question is, could this site's importance spiritually predate these mounds, and previously widely seen by the ancients as a place of sacred energy? Its placement on a hill does speak to this. Maybe the royal dynasty saw the sacred nature of the land and wanted to be buried in the sacred energies, thereby displaying their importance in society. It is well documented that many burial mounds historically have been cleared to be locations for churches across Europe. As the ancient beliefs faded away and Christianity took hold of the country, its governance and spirituality. The idea of the energetic or sacred nature of the area, including nearby Rendlesham Forest, has only been recently reinforced by the discovery of an Anglo-Saxon temple in 2023. The temple was dated to be roughly 1,400 years old. Professor Christopher Scull, Chief Academic Advisor of Rendlesham Revealed, said, "The results of excavations at Rendlesham speak vividly of the power and wealth of East Anglian kings and the sophistication of the society they ruled. Collectively, as humanity's consciousness rises, I hope that in the future society learns to seriously accept and work with intuition or psychic information in exploring its history and heritage. It's built into our biology, our very spiritual essence. For it really does feel that the dead were calling out for Sutton Hoo to be uncovered, giving people a connection to their ancestry, to their heritage. For me, the story of how the site was discovered and the messages from the beyond, dreams and psychic premonitions are some of the most important aspects to this story." I've been Reconsider Simon. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Please share the love and subscribe or like this video. You can catch me on reconsidersimon.com and all major video streaming platforms and podcasting networks. Till next time, bye bye.